We're back now taking a look at the compute offering that we made earlier. What I want to explain in a little bit more depth is this Hypervisor Snapshot reserve field, which we had previously set at 200 for both the compute offering and the disk offering. Now what this is a way to create a volume on the SolidFire SAN that's large enough for not only, in this case, the root disk, but also hypervisor snapshots that can be taken and that would need to take up additional space on that SolidFire volume. So in this case, our template, which was used for our root disk, it turns out it was 20 gigabytes in size. So we would need at least a 20 gigabyte SolidFire volume to support that template. Now if you'd like to take hypervisor snapshots of that particular VM, we're going to need additional space on the supporting SolidFire volume for those delta files. And so this is where the hypervisor snapshot reserve field comes into place. So here we can see it's at 200. That's 200% of the size of the root disk, which the root disk was 20 gigabytes in this case because the template was 20 gigabytes. Let's go over to Zen Center, and we can see this is the SR that supports the root disk for our VM. In the table, we can see that the size of the VDI, in this case the root disk, was 20 gigabytes. And what we did with the hypervisor snapshot reserve is we said, let's make a SolidFire volume that's not just 20 gigabytes, but in addition to 20 gigabytes, 200% of 20 gigabytes more space for hypervisor snapshots. 200% of 20 gigabytes is 40 gigabytes. So we have the 20 gigabytes for the root disk plus an additional 40 gigabytes means that our SR, which really is our clustered file system that we've laid down on the SolidFire volume, it should be 60 gigabytes in size. Let's go over to the General tab. I'll select the size row, and we can see in fact that the SR is 60 gigabytes. We can reconfirm this in the SolidFire GUI by taking a look under our active volumes. If I go to the Volume Overview subtab, and we can see here 60 gigabytes. Whenever you see a discrepancy such as this, where it was 60 gigabytes from Zen Server's point of view and from SolidFire's point of view it was 64.4 gigabytes, that's really a discrepancy between base 2 and base 10 reckoning of the number of bytes. So in fact these two systems do agree, they're just presenting the information slightly differently. Let's go ahead and take a look at our other storage repository. I'm going to select that now. This is for our data disk, which was 100 gigabytes. I'm going to select that row right now. And we had the same concept of 200% of 100 gigabytes to be put aside in addition to the 100 gigabytes for the data disk. So we have in this case 200% of 100 gigabytes, so 200 gigabytes, plus the original 100 gigabytes for the data disk. So I would expect the SR to be 300 gigabytes in size. And let's confirm that by going over to the General tab. I'll select the row just to highlight it, and we can see in fact that the SR is 300 gigabytes. Going once again over to the SolidFire GUI, we should expect to see a number similar to 300, and again a discrepancy between base 2 and base 10 reckoning of the numbers explains the difference between 300 and 322.1 gigabytes. Let's go ahead now and switch over to the CloudStack GUI, over to the Instances tab. I'm going to go over to the Quick View column and take a VM snapshot. I don't need to provide a name, I'll just hit the OK button. And I'll switch over to Zen Center, and we can see here, this is our data disk. Zen Server is in the process of taking a snapshot of both our root and our data disks. So we can see here I've got the data disk highlighted, and now I'm going to highlight its snapshot. If I go over to the SR that supports our root disk and click on the storage tab, same concept. We have our root disk, which is now selected, and I'll switch it over to the snapshot of our root disk, which is selected as well. Well, selected now. Come back over to CloudStack and look in our Notifications tab. We can scroll down to the bottom. Take VM Snapshot was successful. One item that's worth pointing out with respect to Hypervisor Snapshot Reserve is that on the SolidFire SAN, all volumes are thinly provisioned, both their metadata and their actual data. So whether you create a volume at 100 gigabytes or 1 terabyte, for example, is of very little difference. That being the case, you can bump that Hypervisor Snapshot Reserve up quite a bit without actually incurring any negative side effects on the SAN, such as that space actually being taken up in advance. It would only be taken up if and when the space is written to the volume on the SAN.